Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there and welcome back, or welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, a podcast about reaching your potential. And I am Jason Podolin. Today we have an amazing guest to cover all the perspectives of how to be your best, because it is Dave Oliver. Dave Oliver is currently the assistant coach for the New York Rangers of the greatest league in the world, the National Hockey League. But Dave also has a story as a player. He ended up playing in the NHL. He was a 7th-round draft pick for the Edmonton Oilers in the 1991 NHL entry draft. He went 144th overall, left the Vernon Lakers, and went to University of Michigan for 4 years, where he had an unbelievable run there, which he talks about, to the Final Four twice. And then he went to his first NHL camp and made the Edmonton Oilers. His first NHL camp ever attended, he made the Edmonton Oilers. Ended up leading that team in goals as a rookie, the Edmonton Oilers. And we chronicle the beginning parts of his career. We're going from Edmonton, going to the New York Rangers, where he ended up playing on a star-studded team with Gretzky and with Messier and Graves and Leetch and Robitaille and Kovalev and Richter, and my goodness, the names go on. And then how he had to kind of go refine himself in the minors and went to play in Houston, where he met Dave Tippett, who had a really profound impact on his career. So we cover all of that good stuff. We cover him as a father now, a father of 2 young boys who love hockey, who love the game, who love playing the game, and how he can help them and support them. And he has some great advice for other hockey parents out there. And then we also talk about his time with the Colorado Avalanche, where he was for years the director of player development for that team. So it was his job to get players ready to help the Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup. That was what his job was, to give players the support and the assistance they needed, whether it was on ice or off ice development, to get them better. So had a lot of great questions around that. And then, as we said, he's now the assistant coach of the New York Rangers. So now he's behind the bench in the National Hockey League in the middle of a playoff push. And he has a real good thing going there with David Quinn and with Lindy Ruff and the staff there and the players around them. And we have a perspective from all avenues. He was a player. He is a coach. He was a director of player development. He's also a father of kids growing up. So we cover a lot of great topics. Dave has a ton of awesome perspectives, and I really enjoyed the 90 minutes spent with him. So it's not every day you get to talk to an assistant coach of an NHL team. So please open your ears and clear your plates, because this is a lot of good stuff, and I hope you enjoy my interview. So without further ado, here is David Oliver. All right, buddy. You're home under circumstances I'm sure you don't want to be home. I think we'd be doing this a disfavor if we didn't actually talk a little bit about the coronavirus. But first of all, Dave, welcome to Up My Hockey. Thanks so much for being here.
It's about time, hey? We've been talking about this since September. So
yeah, no kidding.
Nice to finally get on here with you.
So yeah, just bring us back. We'll spend maybe 5 minutes on here. I know we were texting a little bit, but you guys were on the road. How did you being back at home in Vernon, BC happen? And it seemed to happen pretty fast.
It was kind of crazy because we had a family trip planned. Sean and the boys were going to come into Phoenix and see us play. And the night before we were to arrive in Phoenix, we played in Denver. So we played the Avalanche, and it was actually right before the game. The guys were stretching, and we were doing all our prep work, getting ready for the game, and started rumblings about the NBA maybe shutting down the season, suspending the season for a while. So, and then probably an hour or so after that, it was between the second and third period, and we were kind of told that that's what had happened. And we probably weren't going anywhere that night, so we were going to be staying in Denver to kind of wait further directions. So from that point on, it was like, call Sean and the boys and say, you know what, I'm not going to be there tonight, but hopefully we can figure something out tomorrow. So it was kind of a crazy 24-hour period.
I believe it. And then so from there, like you were saying, you were supposed to be going. You're almost in a little bit of a holding pattern there. It sounded like, and like you knew you were supposed to be going to Phoenix, but you weren't, and you were just sort of, and then you end up turning the plane around. How was that all communicated to the guys, and what were you guys doing?
Well, we had a big team dinner after the game. We went to a place and we kind of hunkered down there, and everybody was, we're kind of going over the game and figuring out what we're going to do if this happens and if that happens. And at the end of the day, we got up in the morning and we still really didn't know which way we were going, if we're going to Arizona or if we're going to New York. And the decision was finally made to shut it down. And the team went to New York, and Dave Quinn, the head coach, he'd said, you know what, your family's in Phoenix. You may as well go there because we don't know how long this is going to be. So we ended up spending a few days in Phoenix, and then obviously heard of the rumblings of the borders closing and all that, and figured we better get home before that happens.
Wow,
so we
yeah,
got home a few days ago.
that's crazy. Yeah, we just got out of Orlando ourselves, so we're in the self-isolation mode or whatever you want to call it, and hanging out with the family. What has been the directive to the players? Like, is anyone in contact with them? Are they supposed to be kind of staying in shape the best they can, or like what is happening with these NHL guys right now?
Well, I think the assumption is at some point we hope to resume, whether it's the end of the regular season or playoffs. That's still up in the air. The board of governors and Gary Bettman and everybody trying to figure out what's best for the league when all this hopefully subsides in the near future. But a lot of balls up in the air right now. Nobody really knows. If I was a player, I'd be staying in shape because, as you've heard, I mean, I know we're all stuck at home. We're watching whatever is on Sports Center, and we're hoping that the Stanley Cup is awarded this year. So hopefully the players are staying ready, and hopefully
Right.
there'll be a little bit of a training camp and off to the races we go.
Right. Yeah. What a weird time. Never happened before. And so all these
Yeah.
guys are maybe, I
It's
mean,
absolutely crazy. It's
yeah,
crazy.
in communities as an NHL athlete without access to ice, without access probably to a gym. Maybe some of these guys have gyms in their own places, but I mean, it's just still like, what do you,
You're
to get in
doing
the
it at home.
mindset, to get in the mindset that, hey, I got to take care of business without any of the resources I usually have and figure out a way to do it is, as crazy as it sounds, guaranteed some guys are doing it and guaranteed some guys aren't too. I mean, that's just the way, the nature of the beast. Whenever it gets hard, some guys, the harder it is, some guys prefer not to make it happen. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Boy, I hope it happens too. I mean, with no sports, it's just such a surreal scenario. Like, it makes everything that much different. Like, there's just nothing happening right now. And
There's nothing. I mean, you sit here and you can watch old games or whatever, but
yeah,
it's just a weird concept. There's no sports in the entire world. It's
yeah,
bizarre.
so crazy. Well, let's get it. I think you're going to be amazing to talk to. I know you're going to be amazing to talk to, just because I love like your own personal history. It like just so aligns here with what I like talking about is, trying to get somewhere that you want to be, the path you do to the path that you went on. And then even post career, being director of player development for Colorado, working with prospects. I mean, what your roles and responsibilities were there. And now, with the New York Rangers and being an assistant coach there, like, you've seen the game from a lot of different angles now. And I think you have a lot of cool perspectives that I'm sure you're going to add. So I want to start just with you back in the minor hockey days. And, that's where my life is living right now with my own boys, right? I'm in that coaching scenario and involved in the Vernon minor hockey stuff. And a lot of the people I'm talking to now are involved in that too. And I know the minor hockey has changed 100% from the time that we went through it, and like the choices that are out there and everything else. But let's just start like with you now, not as a parent, but as a player. Like, were you the star coming up? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you now.
No, I was just wondering, just with you and your own journey, like, were you a star back in minor hockey? Like, were you the guy that everyone thought was going to play in the NHL, or how did your own development curve happen?
You know what? I think it went in phases, to be honest with you. I think early on in my career, like novice and whatever it was called back then, mini mites and pee-wee pups and those kinds of things. I think I was one of the better players. With my dad's job, we moved around quite a bit. So I grew up on the island in Courtenay, and we moved to Golden for a few years, and hockey wasn't great in Golden. So I did pretty well there. And then we moved to Trail. Trail had a really good hockey program. Obviously, the history in Trail is phenomenal. And I ended up sitting on the bench for a couple of years. I didn't play much. I played maybe 1 or 2 shifts a period. And that was it. That was probably 13, 14, 15. And then I was really, really fortunate that they moved the bantam age back a year, so you got an extra year of bantam. So I got an extra year of bantam, and all of a sudden I went from being the guy that couldn't play to, the leading scorer in basically the East Kootenays or whatever it was, and got to try out for the BC best ever. And that kind of came out of nowhere, because literally I spent 2 years playing maybe 3 to 5 shifts a game. So, and then all of a sudden I was on the best ever, radar, and didn't make that team, but got the tryout, got the experience, got to feel what it felt like to get cut, which was, as everybody knows, you get cut at some point in your life, so you better learn what it feels like. And it was a motivating factor for me. And the next year I ended up playing in the KIJHL and the junior B level. And from there, it turned out, ended up in Vernon, playing for the Vernon Lakers.
Yeah, that's cool. So that is wild, though. So in the span of one season, you went from sitting on the bench to sounds like leading that league in points. It was there, like, did you get bigger? Like, was there something physical that happened there? Was it something, like, what do you think you can attribute that to?
I didn't get bigger, because I was always a smaller guy, but I just started running. And there's these things called the Kaminko Stairs and Trail, and they go forever. And I had a kid, Noel Macri, lived across the street from me. And he was a big kid, and he was a good hockey player, and he trained his butt off. And I just started joining him on runs, and we started doing the stairs together. And the next thing you know, I was faster and I could skate forever, and turned me more into an athlete than a hockey player. And as you know, how important that is. There's a lot of kids that can play hockey, but it's the ones that figure out that you need to be an athlete and you need to be in phenomenal shape. They're the kids that go on and persevere.
That's super wild. So that was just on you. This kid kind of had an example, role model in the neighborhood. He was maybe a little better than you at the time. You're like, hey, this guy's doing something. Maybe I should help on.
You know what, Jay? He was younger than me.
Oh, okay.
He was younger than me, and he could run circles around me. And it was like Creed and Balboa. By the end of the summer, I was beating him in races. And all of this happened after I got cut from the BC Junior, or the BC Best Ever. Right. Once I got cut from that, I knew I was a decent hockey player, but all these other kids were in way better shape than me. So right. I kind of figured it out at that point that, you know what, if I want to play this thing, and I got to do the work to play. So.
Cool. Was that around the same time? Did you always know that you wanted to be a hockey player? Like, was that what you wanted to do?
It was always a dream. Like I told you, I watched you play as a really young kid in the Pee Wee tournament. You had the white gloves. I knew you were going to play in the NHL at some point. I knew it, just watching you play. I was never that kid. Right. So I always had the dream. I mean, most Canadian kids have the dream that you're going to play in the NHL. And I shared that dream with you, but it was just a dream. My more realistic dream was to play BC junior hockey.
Right. So that was where it started. That was the goal.
That was kind of the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah, I mean, I saw it, and then you got to Vernon, which, I mean, would you guys just sort of start essentially the tradition there of them being great? Because you guys had a couple good teams there. I mean, you'd actually won a national championship, didn't you, there?
We did. We won the first one, but we came in on the heels of, Dallas Drake. They kind of turned the thing around there. I think they won the BC championship the year before. And then we came in. We had a really good team. In my first year, we lost in the semifinals, the Centennial Cup way out in Prince Edward Island. And then the next year we hosted it. We were lucky enough to host it. We got ousted by the New West Royals, who had a loaded team. I think they lost like 4 or 5 games all year. And we ended up meeting each other in the final game right here in Vernon, and ended up taking them down in overtime. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable game.
I was at that game.
What were you? Probably 3.
You're not that much older than me, but no, yeah, that overtime, that was obviously at the Civic, and that the place was going nuts. You couldn't fit another person in that rink, and
we were down 5-2 going into the third period, and Dean Coots, our goalie, had taken a 5-minute slashing major, going in with a minute left in the second period. So Murray Caton from Vernon, got to play the third period. Eddie Johnstone yanked Coots out of the net for the undisciplined penalty or whatever, and Murray stood on his head. It was unbelievable to watch. So we went 5-2. We scored a goal, shorthanded goal, first minute of the third period, and then Dwayne Dennis scored one. Local boy Dwayne Dennis scored one with about 10 minutes left, and then my roommate Cam Sylvan tied it up with 2 minutes left, and then he scored the overtime winner as well. It was unbelievable.
That's
That
so
arena was
cool.
just jammed.
Yeah, that's
That's
so
pretty
fun.
cool. Not that I remember it vividly or anything,
Oh, isn't that wild? I mean, it's great to have those really big highs because it's funny. A lot of times you remember the lows, right? Like the ones that are really vivid is like
Yeah.
that's what sticks in your brain. But when you have those real big highs, they definitely imprint. Did you ever think about the WHL? Like, did you know you wanted to be in university if that was going to be opened up for you?
You know what? I had some good direction from a coach that I had. Al Tuck was his name. He was one of my first coach I ever had in hockey, and I had reached out to him because I was listed. They had lists back then. I was listed by Tri Cities. So on our team here in Vernon, me, Jason Marshall, and Bill Lindsay all were listed by Tri Cities, and we had all accepted scholarships to the University of Michigan. So it was kind of crazy, right? And I remember sitting in my home. You know, I was back in Courtney at the time because my dad had moved back there for work, and Billy had called me from the office of the GM or the coach of Tri Cities and said, "Yeah, Ollie, you got to come here. This place is unbelievable. You know, I just signed." And that was kind of heartbreaking for me because me and Billy were really tight back then, and didn't sway me though. I got some direction, like I said, from my old coach and a couple people I trusted. And like I said, I wasn't a big guy. You know, I wasn't a physical guy. I wasn't a fighter or anything like that. So, you know, you remember the days back early in the Western Hockey League. There was a lot going on in that league as far as that goes. So,
Yeah.
figured the college route was probably the best for me to kind of mature, get a little bit bigger, get a little bit stronger. You got 4 years to kind of prove yourself. And you know, it appears I made the right decision way back then.
Yeah, no, good for you. And I mean, I've talked about it on this podcast before. Just that I think it's ridiculous that you actually have to make that decision at like 15 or 16. You know, what path you need to go on. I wish that changes at some point. But yeah, I mean, and Billy Lindsay. When you say Billy, you mean Billy Lindsay, who I played with in Florida, and who
Yeah.
obviously worked out for him too, right? I mean, he had a long NHL career, and
Yeah, it worked out for all three of us, actually. I mean, Jason went on to have a great career, Jason Marshall and Billy Lindsay as well.
yeah, and so yeah, maybe it's a good time to segue. Like, so obviously you're well, not obviously. You are a father. Your kids play hockey. Do they like where are they at with the game? Like, do they want to follow in Dad's footsteps right now? Would that be their dream at this time?
I think so. I mean, they're obviously really fortunate. They get to see it. I mean, obviously we don't spend a ton of time together during the winter because I'm in New York and they're here. But when they come in every month, they get to see it up close and personal with all the players. They're playing one-on-one with Zibanejad and Kreider, and you know they get to see a little different view than most little kids get to see. And I think it might fuel that motivation a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And how? I mean, because there's tons of parents out there that aren't as fortunate as you and I that have, gone through the ups and downs and the draft and the minors and the, all the rest of it that comes with trying to be a pro hockey player. And, and they have dreams for their kids too. And sometimes there's dreams out there for these other guys. And there's just a lot of questions right now. Like as a guy who's been there and you have a couple good hockey players on your hands. I mean, how do you support that? Like, what's your view on supporting that right now to help them try and get where they want, considering that they're, 10 and 11 years old or 10 and 12 years old, they're young, right?
Well, that consideration is number one. They're minor 9 and 11, right? Almost 10 and 11. So they're 10 and 11 and they're going to have fun like 10 and 11-year-olds. And that's the way I look at it. That's the way my parents were. Do I want to help them with certain things like how to shoot and, maybe get them out there running a little bit more, but it's not, we don't go the whole 12-month hockey thing. I like to play catch, play football, play lacrosse, do a whole bunch of different things with our kids. And as much as I would love to see them fulfill the dream one day, if they do continue to go down that path, that's their choice. It's not my choice. It's their choice. They love all different sports. So, I mean, ideally, between you and I'd love to see them on the PGA Tour one day and me carrying their bags. It's a lot better than a hockey bag, buddy, because I know you and I have seen more of the downside of the game than the upside of the game.
Right.
We persevered through it because we loved it, and that hasn't changed, that hasn't faded in me. But it's a grind, and it's a grind, man. Every day it's a grind, unless you're that upper echelon guy, man. It's a battle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many interesting lessons along the way. And that's one thing that I've talked about here a little bit is just, you know, yeah, did I do what I wanted to do or what I thought maybe I should have, or however you want to frame that sentence. But like in all the trials and in all the adversity, it shapes you, you know, and I guess it can be a positive thing or a negative thing. For me, I think I've made it a positive now, and which is even one of the reasons why we're talking, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
it's not, it's glorified so much, right? Like the fact of playing there. Because what people see is they see the sports center and they see the toe drags and they see these things, right? But they don't see the grit, and they don't see the grind, and they don't see the dirt and the blood and sweat and the tears that goes in. And not everyone ends up on the first line in the NHL, and there's a lot of reasons why that happens. Now, would I redo it and change it? No, because it is what it is, right? But it is interesting, like you say, that now when you look at it from the father's eyes, I think that changes the whole 9 yards. Like the stuff that my parents were doing, like moving, you know, like me leaving home at 16, like it's just crazy, right? Like those types of sacrifices that people are making, and even younger now, right? With this idea that we need to do this in order for my kid to have a chance. I think that when we're, you know, like the perspective, I just think you got to trust the process. Even hearing you say that story at 14 years old, you were in trail and not the best player, not even be able to play on your team. You know, like everyone has their own path. And I think if people can just be a little patient and allow things to happen and be supportive, like from an emotional side, and, you know, let them get on the ice. But when you start losing your mind about ice time, you start losing your mind about where they are, or, you know, what hockey school is the right hockey school, or all these crazy things that become massive decisions. I just think people got to take a big breath and realize that it's going to work out.
Yeah, obviously the greatest gift to me was how my parents reacted during those times, right? And they were incredible. They never made a fuss about anything. It was when I came out after a game and I played 3 shifts, it was a great game. It was a great game. Good job. You did everything you could. And that was it. They never ever there was no issues. They never had an issue. They just they just watched. They appreciated when they got to see me play, and if I played great, if I didn't, no big deal. And they always supported me no matter what I did. So them not making a big deal out of me not playing much probably helped me keep the love for the game. And when I had an opportunity to step up, and I actually took it upon myself to get in shape and play, it all worked out. But
Right.
I'm convinced that if I had parents that were, you know, screaming at coaches and doing things that because my kid wasn't playing or he didn't play as much as little Johnny or whatever, then you know what, I probably would have packed it in. And that's just a guess. But you know, because I did love the game as much as I ever did, even when I wasn't playing.
Right.
And you know, I attribute that to my mom and dad.
No, that's great. And would that be an overall, like, I don't know, message, advice to parents out there? Like, because everyone seems, and it's just me saying what I see, it seems like people want to solve their kids' problems right now. And if there's the slightest hint of an issue, meaning adversity, like meaning, yeah, ice time, or, you know, he didn't get out there when he missed one shift. I mean, everyone wants an answer for everything, and everyone wants to fix everything, and everyone wants to point a finger. Like, do you think that people just got to trust that process a little bit more? Or like, how do you, like, what would be your advice to parents right now when it comes to that kind of thing?
There's two things. There's physical maturity, right? And there's emotional maturity. And until you have both those things going in your direction, I think a parent can really change the path of where your kid may end up. You don't know how good your kid might be, you know. You have no idea if mentally and emotionally that kid isn't ready to be put into a situation where it's do or die, as far as am I going to make the team, or am I going to get more ice, or am I that guy on the team? And if you're not that guy, then it affects the parents more than it affects the kid. Then you're going to really ruin that kid's love for the game. And that's what, to me, that's what we shared when we were all kids. It was just about the love for the game. We just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And I think that's being ruined because a lot of parents just want everything for their kid right now. And I'm telling you, the emotional piece of it is huge. And being able to just mature and grow as a young man or young woman, and figure your way into where you fit in a team. And it may not happen when you're 10 or 12 or 14 like me. It may be when you're 16. And now everybody considers that way too late. Well, you know what? If you're good enough, they'll find you.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, those are, I mean, that's great advice. I think that's key. And feeling like you're responsible too. Like I think when parents get involved, and I don't want to spend too much time here, but like it takes the ownership off the kid to try and figure something out. Like there's when the conversation at home is why weren't you playing, or why did so and so play, or your coach is terrible, he doesn't get it, or all these things, right? All that stuff is deflected away from the actual athlete who is so needs to feel responsible for where he is and why he's maybe not playing or whatever the heck is going on in that scenario, right? And I think that's the big injustice from parents in my mind, is like it takes the accountability away, and accountability is such a big piece. I mean, talk about emotional maturity, but like that, the quicker anyone, and that's the gift I think is hockey, and that's the gift that I think is when I'm working with my clients now, is that this is such an amazing platform, like this thing of called hockey, that they care about, that they want to do better at, that you can teach these amazing things that are going to transfer into whatever the heck it is that they do, whether it's the relationships or whether it's them being parents or them being great carpenters, right? Like the accountability piece is big. Like you are responsible for yourself, and you need to find a way to find solutions. And when you always want to get involved as a parent and solve or blame, it takes that accountability piece away. And I think that's an injustice personally.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to let the kid fail and let him pick himself up, dust himself off, and get back to work and
Yeah. And get
persevere.
it
I
going
mean,
again.
my parents never told me to go out and run. They never told me to go out and get in shape. It's one of those things. You see a kid across the street doing it, and he was a pretty good hockey player at the time. I'm like, you know what? I need to do that. I need to get
Right.
off my butt, and I need to do that. So it made a
No, that's
big
great.
difference in my life.
No, that's great. Exposure to stuff is good. Being curious about stuff is great. What? You go off to Michigan. They dangled the cherry in front of you there in Tri-Cities. You said, no, I'm going to Michigan. And that turned out
Yeah.
to be an amazing choice too, because you were, I mean, super successful there, not only from a team, but also personally. And there were some real good players on that team. I know that you always smile fondly looking back on that time there. That was, you really enjoyed your 4 years, correct?
It was incredible. Yeah. You wish you get done. You just wish you could go back and do it again right away. You give up your pro career to go back and have those 4 years back. My housemates, my teammates, the four different groups of teammates I had. I mean, it's a special place. Ann Arbor's a special place, and obviously we had success there. We made it 2 Final Fours, never got the job done, but as far as winning a national championship, but it was incredible memories, and those guys are some of my best friends that I have to this day.
Yeah. And so looking back on that again, there was no, like would you want your boys to pursue that route if they got to that scenario? Would college be the way, or university be the way you would point them?
Well, it gives you options. I mean, the Western League obviously does a great job now with the education packages and stuff. But I mean, like you said, you alluded to earlier, you have to make that decision at such a young age, right? So um, I'm not going to tell my kids what they have to do, but I'll certainly give them the pros and cons, and let them weigh out their decision that they're going to have to make. Hopefully, they get
Right.
that decision that they're going to have to make one day.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, a lot of time between now and then.
Do you think that fit in though, as far as like your development curve? Like, did it actually benefit you as well to be there? Like to come out of that after 4 years of college and being 23 instead of me showing up in pro hockey at 20, right, with sort of a different level of expectations. Again, that emotional maturity piece, the physical maturity piece. Like, how do you think that played in for you and your development?
Well, it's everything, right? Like you experienced the whole living on your own thing when you were really young. You were playing 80 to 100 games a year, playoffs and stuff, right, in the Western
Yeah.
League,
Yeah.
where I was a smaller kid, probably weighed 178 pounds when I went to school. And I had 4 years, and the lifting and the training and stuff that you get there, you only play 35 games a year. And, you know, basically turning yourself into a man while you're there. You learn to live on your own, cook on your own, do all those things. You don't have a billet. You just kind of plopped in a dorm room and say, here you go, right? Just like
Right.
every other college kid in the world. So the learning curve was pretty steep there. It was a lot of work. The hockey was really tough and physical with the school that had to be done. Michigan's not a piece of cake, walk in the park school. So there was a lot to be done. It was overwhelming at times your first year, but after that, you kind of you get the routine going, and like I said, the guys that you meet there just become your best buddies, and the whole experience overall was just incredible.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, for me, I mean, I kind of have the same reminiscing of like Spokane. So I was in Spokane for 4 years, and it wasn't all peaches and cream and stuff. There was some hard times there, but I really remember those years, like really formative years, right?
Yeah.
And really blessed that I was there. It was a great organization. I love everything about it. But in saying that, I would like to go back and try the university. I mean, I don't hear many guys say that. Like, I really like university, but I would like to go try major junior. But I have had guys say, "Hey, it would be interesting to try what the university was all about," right? And I think there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. And plus, you don't know that crystal ball, right? Like, as far as I think for me personally, it would have been good to be there, playing less games, working more on my physical side, like getting stronger, becoming more of a man, slowing down that rush to get to the NHL. Like, you feel like you're supposed to be there. And then even with me, like, it was funny because guys were coming out of college at 23, and by then I was washed up, but in some people's minds, right? Because I was 20 in the show, 21, 22, scoring in the minors, but it's like I had my chance, and you know what I mean? Like, you're passed over almost. And these guys are just coming out now. They're fresh and they're rookies, and they're like new talent. So I just felt that interesting too. Like, even that development arc, like when guys came out of there, that more in a man, more ready, I think. Well, you have to be more ready. How are you not more ready, right?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head, though. I mean, as far as development, when you went to college, you did get some development. Like, it's not like the development there is nowadays. But I mean, you were just playing hockey, right? When you were in
Yeah.
school, you were just playing hockey, and then when you turned pro, you were just playing hockey. And if you were good enough at the time, you were good enough. But if you weren't, where did you go? They just kicked you to the minors,
Yeah.
right? Nowadays, with the whole development scheme that's in place for all these teams, you know, a guy like you, big, skate, skill, could shoot a puck, could score, could make plays. They're going to spend a little bit more time with you than that feeling you got where, you know, some kids coming out of college, well, you're washed up and you're done at 22 years old.
Right.
That's not going to happen now.
Right.
But we didn't get the benefit of that back in the day, right?
Right.
It was either you got it done or you didn't. Just like every other job in the world, you either get
Yeah.
it done or someone's coming to take your job.
Yeah.
Now there's a little bit more patience and a little bit more time put into the, you know, trying to make sure that all of the picks succeed, right?
Right.
That's kind of the development role now, and every team's jumped in full throttle on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to get to that definitely, because I think there is, I mean, it's way more key than it was before in the Sally Cap era, and I think we'll get into that. But I do want to, so you go from University of Michigan, and if I got this right, it was the lockout year, your first year
Yep.
in Edmonton. So did you
Yep.
start then in Cape Breton? Is that where you started, or did you
Yeah.
finish there?
Yeah, I got the old, you know, you've made the team. Unfortunately, there's no hockey. So you're
Right.
going to the American Hockey League in Cape Breton. So yeah, we got sent down. There was probably 7 of us that got sent down because we had a really young team in Edmonton.
Yeah.
So Tyler Wright, Todd Marchand, Ralphie Intranuvo, Peter White. There was a whack of us that got sent down at the start of the NHL season to go down and play for the Cape Breton Oilers. And lived in a hotel room, Holiday Inn in Cape Breton for 4.5 months. Tyler Wright was my roommate, and we did everything together. It was a crazy time. There wasn't much going on, and the casino wasn't there yet in Cape Breton. There wasn't a whole lot going on other than just the hockey team. So
Right.
it was a pretty unique experience, and that was an introduction to pro hockey for me.
Had you gone? I can't remember now. Were you allowed to go to pro camps as a university player?
No, there was no development camp. There was no such thing as development back then. So that first training camp, that was it for me.
That was the first time you've been introduced to the NHL level and the NHL players.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I didn't even, you know, I lived in a house in Michigan with 5 other guys that were all drafted, and you know, they got phone calls every day from their every week, every Monday their NHL team would call, and I didn't get anything. I got nothing. Like, so I dreamt playing the NHL, but there wasn't much interest in me. And you know, my senior year, I was up for the Hobey Baker at Michigan as one of the top players in the country. And it was funny. It was March, and Brad Smith, who became a coworker of mine with the Avalanche, he worked for the Oilers at the time. And I remember coming down the stairs, mid-March game, and he was like, "Dave Oliver, yeah, Brad, Motor City Smitty, the Edmonton Oilers." And I was like, wow, it's the first guy I talked to. he said, "I want you playing for us at the end of the season." And then my jaw like hit the floor. I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?" So that was kind of a little bit of an inclination that I might get a chance to play, but there was no development. There wasn't much communication. There wasn't any of that. It was just show up and be ready to try and make a hockey team.
Right. And how did you handle that? Like where I mean, maybe that was one advantage. I remember, you know, me being drafted at 18 and I was, you know, you go to pro camp. I was at the Florida Panthers camp at 18 years old, right? Like that first year and like playing with those guys and kind of figuring out and seeing what it was all about. And, but with you stepping in there first time and then actually made the team, like, was it, you know, what describe that? What was that like?
Well, you know how it works. Like hockey, no matter what, novice, NHL, it's all about opportunity, right? Like it's really clear and simple. And when I got to Edmonton, you know, I'd just come off a really good senior year at Michigan, and they gave me a chance. So as much as I felt like I earned it and worked hard in the summertime and got in great shape and all that, I got put on a line with Jason Arnott and Shane Corson on day one. So the confidence from that and Shane Corson coming up to me and saying, "Hey, kid, just play your game. You know what? We want you on our line. Just play your game." That was like, you know, a big exhale sigh of relief to go, "Hey, I might have a chance here. This could be a good thing for me." So, you know, I Jason Arnott, I still talk to him. He's my first centerman in the league, and I ended up playing with those guys that pretty much that whole year, right from training camp, right on through. So, I was very fortunate. I took advantage of an opportunity that was given to me, and that first year was one I'll never forget.
Well, and I mean, I don't know. We never talk about this stuff ever, but I mean, when I looked and I dug into that team as a rookie in a lockout shortened season, mind you, I mean, you Oilers, you weren't, you weren't crushing the league or anything, but you led that team in goals, Ollie.
Yeah, I had a good year. I had a good first year.
You led an NHL team in goals. Like that's
Yeah,
really, I was like looking at it, I'm like, holy smokes. Like I never knew that. That's a big deal. And like, and if you extrapolate that out over a full season, that's, I mean, you're probably getting close to 30 goals campaign. Like that's a hell of a year to step in and have a year like that. And which I think is interesting because like, that's sort of like, so the next step, is the next season. So you scored 20 again, your next year. So now you have essentially a 30 goal campaign and then you score 20. You're still playing with those guys?
no, no. So my first year, I was a first line guy all year, playing with Corson and Arnie. And then my second year, it kind of got bumped down to the third, fourth line, but I played first power play. So most of those goals, I was a power play guy. That was pretty much my niche on the team.
Right.
Didn't play a lot 5-on-5, um, and that just kind of became who I was within that organization. And you know, it was what it was. Like I said, my young up and coming days playing bantam kind of prepared me for all the things that I was about to go through. You didn't appreciate it at the time, but kind of understanding the lay of the land in the NHL, and there's always somebody better than you coming in. And um, I wasn't prepared to deal with it at the time. I wasn't prepared to go, what do I need to do to be better so that I can get my spot back? I just kept doing the same thing over and over again, which, you know, now I sit back and it drives me crazy because if you fast forward it to the end of my career, I met a trainer down in Vancouver that really changed my life. He made me quicker, faster, stronger when I was 31. And had I done that when maybe I got bumped out of my seat in Edmonton my first or second year, who knows what might have happened, right?
Yeah,
But
100%.
you know, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, can you point to anything like though? I mean, coming again, leading the league, and that's the thing. Like, I like talking about this stuff because it's the stuff that doesn't really get talked about. It's like so you come off your rookie year leading the Edmonton Oilers in goals. You come back to camp, and now you're not a first line guy anymore for some reason. Like, was that ever explained to you why you weren't a first line guy anymore, or why the team's leader in goals is now going to be a third line player?
No, not much. I mean, like that the league was big and it was physical and there was a lot of tough players back then, right? And clearly at 5'10", 185 pounds, that wasn't who I was. I could score, I could think, I could shoot, but there's guys that are bigger and stronger and tougher that could come in and do what I did. And that kind of removed me from my seat. And like I said, the whole physical side of it and becoming faster and becoming quicker and doing all the things that I probably should have been doing at that point in time, I didn't do enough. I didn't do it enough. And I let myself down. It took me about 8 years pro to realize that. And my agent, Kurt Overhart, and a trainer down in Vancouver, Sean Karp, to really show me, how fit I could be and how hockey strong I could be.
Right.
And that changed, like I said, it changed my life, but that's 7 years too late.
Sure. How about was the communication there? And I know this will tie into what you're doing now, but like back then, I mean, I tell people when they ask, and I'm like, I got traded to Toronto for Kirk Muller, and I had a 3-minute conversation with the coach. And then I had one other conversation with the coach that was maybe 6 minutes long, where he told me to play defense. Like that was the extent of the communication of like what was expected or what I was supposed to do. And I was also scared shitless to even go in the office and like to say anything at the time. It just like the communication in most teams was zero. I mean, that's 20 years ago now, but like, did you find that then too? Is it the same? Would you have knocked on the door and said, "Hey, what's up?" Or were you just on the third line, happy to be there trying to figure it out? Or
not a chance. Not
Right.
a chance. No.
Yeah.
And the guy that we had at the time, he was a nice guy. Like Ron Lowe was our coach. He was a nice guy, but he was still the head coach. And you just, unless you were an upper echelon guy, you just didn't do that. Like you didn't do it unless it came down to it one time where I got sat out for a couple games and he wasn't going to play me until I went and talked to him. So I had to go talk to him, and it's an intimidating thing. It was Ron Lowe and Glenn Sather was there at the time as a GM. It's intimidating guys walking around there that have done a whole lot of great things in the game. So and you just feel like you're just a number.
Right. Do you feel that has changed now, like you in your role? And we'll get into that a little bit later, but like, do guys ask more questions now? Are you responsible to answer more questions?
Absolutely. It's open door policy. And I know Dave Tippett's one of the best coaches I've ever had. He was real easy to talk to. And I think that's Dave Quinn in New York, I had him in the American League. I always knew he was going to be a good NHL coach because he communicates so well with his players and gets them to go through the wall for him. And, our whole staff, it's an open door policy. The video that we have now, like it's so detailed that any player can see anything they want to see at any point, any game, the entire season. And we have video guys and iPads, and they have their own iPads, and we can throw video to them. And it's really a 180 from what you and I experienced when we played. It's pretty incredible.
Which is good because it makes guys accountable, I think, on a different level. Because if you're actually told or if you know what it is you're supposed to be doing or they want you to do or get better at, then it's on you to execute that without having to figure out what it is that you need to do. I think that clears some of the air, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's when you don't know what you're doing wrong every day and you seem to be just getting pined for trying your butt off to do whatever you can do to try and make an impact to get into the lineup or move up the lineup, but you don't know. There's no positive reinforcement. There's no constructive criticism. It's really hard to figure it out, but that's something that we had to deal with. And certainly the guys nowadays, that's not the case.
That's good. I had Andy Delmore on a few episodes ago, and I'm leading with that is because so you went from leading the team to 20 goals the next year as a power play guy to like 1 goal in 17 games, and then the trade to New York, where like it's just amazing how quick something like that can happen. I brought out Andy because Andy tied for the league lead in NHL for defenseman goal scoring. 17 with Nick Lidstrom and Zubov, right?
Pretty good names.
Can you believe that, right? And then the next year he signed, he got traded. I think he went to Buffalo. He had 33 games. He had 2 goals, and he was in the minors and like never to be almost heard from again. I mean, he came back a little bit and had his, but like it was like that quick, to be at the top and then to not be anywhere. And we talked about that kind of struggle and how he dealt with that. Like, how did it come? Like that now that third year, we're looking at the stat line. It looks like you're not playing at all, and maybe a healthy scratch a ton of times too. How was your mindset in that? And talk about that a little bit, your third year pro.
No, it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable because I It's funny. I'll tell you the story how the first 4 or 5 games of the season went. I started in the press box. Mike Greer had come in, a big, strong kid out of BU. He was fast and he could hit like a truck, and he had some skill too. He was a great guy, unreal human being, one of the best teammates you could have. And I wasn't with him that long, but he basically came in, and you just get dropped down a couple of spots, and we had some better players that year that were better than me, and that's just the way it was. And at the end of the day, I started in the press box, and then I got to play on the fourth line. Had a really good game, and then I got a game on the third line. Had a really good game, and then got moved up to the second line, and I had a really good game. Scored a goal. I was back with Jason Arnott and Dean McCammon, who lives in Vernon. Scored a goal in that game, and the next game we were playing. We talked about opportunity, how lucky I was my first year coming into training camp, Corson and Arnott.
Yeah.
Well, now here's my opportunity, my third year, to make a splash, and we're playing the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's Yager, Francis, and Lemieux. Okay, and I'm playing with Dougie Waite and Zdeno Seeger, and we were matched up against those guys. I was -3 in the first 12 minutes of the game, and that was my last opportunity to play top line. And hey, sure, you know what? I'll take blame for all 3 of those goals. Those are 3 Hall of Famers and 3 of the best players that ever played the game, and something I'll never forget. But that kind of set the tone for the rest of the year. And I actually didn't get traded to New York. I got picked up on waivers. Kent Nielsen. Now I'm really dating myself. Kent Nielsen came out of retirement, so they had to open up a roster spot. So that was me. Got put on waivers. Got claimed by the New York Rangers, which was shocking to me because they were making a run. They were one of the best teams in the East. And Wayne Gretzky, Brian Leetch, Mark Messier, Adam Graves, Boo Kaboo, like you go up and down, Mike Rick, like it was
Kovalev, Robitaille. I looked at that
Robitaille, team. It was crazy. It was, it was as miserable as my first 5 months of that season were. It was like I won a cereal box contest, and I got to go hang out with a bunch of future Hall of Famers, and they embraced me because half that team was ex-Oilers. So I was coming from Edmonton. They took me in, Gretz and Mess, and those guys. They treated me like I was one of them. It was honestly, it was an amazing few months that I was in New York. We made a good run. We got to the Eastern Conference Final, and we lost to Philly. And then and then next year I had to figure out a way to find the love of the game again. And the guy Brian Wiseman, who was my centerman at Michigan, had signed in Houston of the IHL. And it was a real good league at the time, and Dave Tippett was the coach. And Wise had said, hey, I know you're miserable. I know you're not having fun. Let's get the band back together. Let's get the fun back in the game, and let's get you back to the NHL. And he's one of my best friends to this day. He knew what I needed. And I went down to Houston and played for Tip, who's one of the greatest coaches I've ever seen. And spent 2 years down there with those guys. We won. We knocked you guys out, and we won. we won the Turner Cup in 1999, and found my way back to the NHL. And he ended up being the head coach of the Dallas Stars, and fortunately, he brought me in, and I got to play a little bit more in the NHL. So it was crazy turn of events and how that all played out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we both know how good Wisey was as a player, and so you were on his wing, and he's feeding you pucks, and you're doing what you do is put it in the back of the net, and that was your first introduction to Dave Tippett.
Yeah,
at that
point, first introduction was Wise had already signed in Houston, and Wise was like, he basically said to Tip, we need to get this guy. He's kind of lost right now, which was what I was.
Yeah.
And he's like, we can make this thing happen. So, took a little bit of a haircut as far as the pay goes, but had a blast and played on a great team with great coaching. And he made me a better player every single day.
Right. No, that's great. Coaches can have a big impact. I want to talk about that. But so in your own personal scenario, so when the season was over with New York, then your contract was done, your
Yeah.
entry level contract. So then you were a free agent essentially.
Well, they had their rights to me, and I actually had our rights, and you pointed out I had pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
Um, so we were going to go to arbitration. They settled. They offered me a one-way contract, and they basically told me that I was going to end up being in the minors because they had just signed. It was crazy. The guys we lost in the conference finals, so they were tightening up the roster to make a real run the next year, and pretty much told me that I'd be making my one-way money down in the minors. So I chose to go with the guy that I knew, I trusted. I believed he'd make me a better player and I'd have more fun. Took way less money to go down there and play and get that love for the game back again.
Wow, that's a big decision though, man.
It was.
Yeah.
It really was. And the only part of that decision that I regret is that next year, even if somehow I could have found a way to make that team or be a part of that team somehow, that was Gretz's last year.
Right.
That would have been really cool. I mean, he was. I was lucky I got a chance to play with my idol, and that part hurt. The unknown that if I was there, I would have been able to see that guy playing his last game, which would have been really, really cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I remember I happened to be in Los Angeles with the Kings at that time. So yeah, I guess had we been knocked out already by you guys? I can't remember that chronology or like that scenario, but I was in the Forum. We were still in the Forum at that time. And because the game was being played out east, his last game, like our entire game stopped. Like our warm-up stopped, and we watched Wayne Gretzky skate around the ice after his game was over.
No way.
Yeah, it was like, so we're in LA. I mean, he had obviously left LA. So we were there on the bench. I was an LA King watching Wayne Gretzky retire in New York as a Ranger, right? Skating around. Like I don't remember a lot of things, but I totally remember that. That was the real impactful moment that we were doing that, watching that. And since we're talking about Wayne, like, is there anything, I mean, like, again, you listed those names. My jaw dropped when I opened up the roster there for the Rangers. I mean, Gretzky, Messier, Leetch, Graves, Robitaille, Kovalev, Richter. Like, I mean, what a group. And you said you got to play with your idol. Like, what is there any stories about him or Messier, like as just like the leadership qualities of him, or Gretzky as a human, or like what's one of the stories that just sticks out that would be a good one for us to hear?
Well, you know what? It was just a crazy time because honestly, as great of a hockey player as that guy was, and you hear this everywhere, he was a better human being. He was an amazing teammate, Gretz, and I remember his family had gone to LA for something, and my phone rang because I was in a hotel, right? Because I came late in the season, didn't get a place. I was in a hotel, and I answered the phone, and he's like, "Hey, Ollie." I'm like, "Yeah." He says it's Gretz, and I'm like, "Yeah, right." No. He's like, "I get that all the time. It's Wayne." He's like, "It's Wayne," and it was around now, and it was the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament,
Right.
and he's like, "Why don't you come down to my restaurant?" I'm like, like, "Where's that?" He's like, "The All-Star Cafe." He goes, "Come on down there, meet me down there. We'll watch some basketball." And we spent the afternoon watching basketball, and I got there, and on my chair there was an All-Star Cafe jacket and hat and all this stuff. Like he took care of people. He was unbelievable. And spent the day together and went home. And then I had a buddy in town with me that night, and he called again. He's like, "Hey, let's go for dinner." It's just one of those things where he knew I was in a hotel hanging out by myself, and he was like, "You know what? Let's get together." It was Wayne Gretzky, but he wasn't. He was just another teammate that just happens to be the greatest player that ever played the game. So it was a crazy time for me, and my mom and dad, they had that ginormous satellite dish back then, right, in the backyard, so they could watch me play. And my mom, I called her after my first game. It was in Philly, and she said they panned the bench, and she said I was just staring at Wayne on the bench. So I was like a kid in a candy store. At the time I was probably 26 years old, but I felt like I was 12. It was an unreal experience just to be in that room with all those guys, and Mess and Leetch, and it was unbelievable. Tikkanen was my roommate. he's one of the best roommates you could ever ask for. Just an amazing guy. So
Right.
great memories from that few months that I was there in New York.
100%. I mean, as cool as that is, I'm listening to it and I'm thinking like some guys walk into that environment and maybe aren't that starstruck. Like I was, in my short time in Toronto, let's say, like that was a bigger market. It was bigger players there, Matt Sundin and Curtis Joseph and Wendell Clark and, like big names like that. And I was a 20-year-old kid and I walked in there, I was like, holy smokes. Right. And my first game was against Lindros, Leclerc and Renberg, like matched up against those guys, Legion of Doom. Lindros had 4 goals that game. And it took, well, actually, I never even had the opportunity, to be honest, like to get to a spot where I was like, I'm supposed to be on the ice with these guys, like to have that mindset of like,
I same thing. I
right.
felt the same way my whole career. Actually, I was such a fan of the game, and it was such a dream to me.
Yeah.
That you see guys come in with that confidence and that air that you need to be like a player in that league and a consistent player in that league and a guy that can have longevity in that league. And man, you need to believe inside and out that you are that guy and you belong here and you can do whatever you need to do. And
right.
I always found that, confidence comes and goes, but the confidence in your skill comes and goes. You know what I mean? Like when you're scoring, when you're not, but that mental process that I belong here, man, that's special. If you can get that and believe it, like you said, you walk into that room, those guys made me feel like home when I got there. It wasn't like they were this, this crazy feeling of, oh my God, these guys are so much better than me. Nobody made you feel that way. That came from inside of me. Right.
Right.
So I share that same feeling you did. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think the environment does matter. Maybe that's a good segue into like what you do now. I mean, I've told the story on here before. Just my last kick at the can was when I tried out for Detroit. And I was 29 years old. I mean, end of my career. Thought I could maybe play in the league still, else I wouldn't have tried. And actually had a really good opportunity to. Got hurt in camp, neither here nor there. But that was the most comfortable I had ever been in an NHL environment. Mind you, I was 10 years older, right? So I mean, there was a maturity level there. But the way those guys treated me and included me, and like Chris Chelios, for instance, like similar story with Wayne Gretzky, walking across the room, no idea who I am. Camp shakes my hand, takes me to his chili bar. Right, we're in Detroit at his chili bar. He's walking me through the whole place, me and one other guy, right? Like Holmstrom invited me to play golf. Hasek talking to me at the front of the bus for 30 minutes. Like these weren't conversations that I had to go seek. Like guys made you feel a part of things, right? Whereas, Toronto, LA, like Blake and Robitaille and all those guys, they probably didn't even know I was on the team. At least that's the way I felt, right? Like, and I think that does help. I think you talk about culture, and I'm sure now that you're on an assistant coach role, like that idea that the bottom guy's got to feel like he's participating, that he's included, that he's making a difference, right? I think all those things really do matter in a team level. But I'm going to digress a little bit. And you're talking about that little key piece, right? That piece that you wish you had, that I wish that I had, that I was supposed to be there, and that I belong. Like, how do you, as a director of player development with Colorado and now as assistant coach, like how do you go about teaching that, or how do you talk to guys about that if you think that they might not have that little piece?
Well, I think that everything has to do with the culture, what you're bringing them into. That being able to be comfortable with who you are in the environment, that you're pulling all these kids out of their own environment and you're putting them into one, and your ultimate goal is to win a Stanley Cup. And there's a lot of togetherness that needs to be formed for you to be able to win a cup together. And exactly what we're talking about, what Yzerman and Chelios did for you, and Messier and Gretzky and Leetch did for me in New York, that has to be paramount from day one. When you bring all these kids together, we're all in this together. We all have unique skill sets. We all want you to be good at what you're bringing to the table. We don't want clones. We're all here for a reason, and you're all gifted in different areas. And all those different areas brought together are going to win us a Stanley Cup, right? And getting them to understand that at 18, it's a challenge because there's a whole lot of other things that you have to teach while you're trying to build that culture. But it is, to me, it was right from day one of all those kids understanding sort of when I was working in Colorado that we're all in this together. I mean, one of the first years I was there, we did we handed out a gift, and every kid got like a chain link, right? A big one, and it was silver plated, right? The color of the cup. Every one of those kids got one of those chains, and they're useless by themselves. But when we stick all those things together, we're a pretty good, strong group, right? And
Yeah.
that was the message. Each one of those represents who you are in our quest to win a Stanley Cup.
Right.
And you know what? Just building that bond within each other and building the trust, because that's the biggest thing. It's trust. It's trust, teammates trusting each other, and it's them trusting the coaches. Where in our day, I don't think there was a whole lot of trust. That on the other side, they were too worried about how good I was going to be,
Yeah.
or how good you were going to be. Now that process, those building blocks are, we're going to do everything we can to make this kid better than even he thinks he can be.
Right.
And once you get that, and you get that trust factor in there, and that relationship built, the sky's the limit for all those guys. Even kids that you don't think are going to have a chance to make it. Some of those kids find a way to make it because of the belief that we've shown in them.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a big difference maker for sure. And your role there as director of player development for Colorado, can you briefly walk through some of the people, like tell people what that means, like what your roles and responsibilities would be in that role?
It's funny because when anybody asks me that, it's like parenting. And you know what? You and I are both fortunate. We're going through it with young kids. It is really no different from that. It's creating a bond, creating a relationship, creating a trust factor, and teaching them basically how to eat, sleep, train, skate, mentally prepare. You're trying to make sure that there's nothing that comes their way that they're not ready for. And if there's things that they're not good at, we aim at those things, and we make sure that they're working on their things that they need to be better at. Their high end skill, whatever. If it's a goal scorer, he can shoot, but maybe he needs to be in better shape, or maybe a simple thing like his diet. That's one of the biggest things that we worked on with our kids at development camp, was diet and nutrition, and how to eat to be able to perform. I mean, we didn't get any of that. Like back in the day, it was Kraft dinner and a piece of chicken, maybe, like that was what was preparing us to play. And now, like I said, we're building a map on these are all the roads that you need to take. And the end goal is always the Stanley Cup. It's always the Stanley Cup. And for them to feel that they are a piece of that, to me, like I said earlier, that's everything. It's that trust factor and that belief that, hey, I'm a little piece of this.
Yeah.
Trying to create that through every little facet of what a parent does. Trying to prepare your kid to be good in school. You're trying to prepare them to be a good human being, to be kind to your neighbors, to be all the things that you want your child to be. That's basically what player development is.
So you have a bunch of little, no, kids is the wrong word, but you treat them like, because how many people, you were alluding to stuff that's off ice, and I think that's maybe grown a little bit with the game, because I think when it first started, player development was like, on ice stuff and working on crossovers or skating or whatever, physical tools guys need. And now I'm talking to guys like you that were in that role. It sounds like a lot of that stuff is now starting to come off the ice. And I assume it's player specific too. It's individualized. Some guys need some more help away from the game maybe, but did you find yourself working with stuff off the ice with these guys quite a bit?
Well, absolutely. Like it's such a detailed program now. We have a person for every one of those aspects of development, right? We have a sleep guy. We have a nutrition guy. We have a skating girl. We have when we were in Colorado, we had everything. And you go to New York, and it's another level up. We have somebody for every facet of everything. And it's no stone unturned to try and figure out how we can quickly and without missing any of the process, quickly make a player that is almost good enough to a player that is a important piece of our National Hockey League roster. It's
Right.
huge.
Yeah.
And it's the free agent guys you sign, the guys that you draft, they have to pan out, right? They have to they have to make you into a Stanley Cup contender in the cap era. It's a fact.
Yeah, the cap era is huge. I mean, and the odds are still staggering to me, right? Like even to get drafted, how many guys will have 100-game NHL career is so low when you go through the rounds. But like if that development system can turn one more guy out of a draft into a New York Ranger in this scenario, like you're saving so much room off the top to be able to sign those other guys, right, to make it competitive. So like the development. I can understand why teams spend so much so much money on the development side, because it's not cap money, right? It's development money. And if you can turn those prospects into players, my gosh, you're saving yourself a ton on the top end. So it just makes total sense.
Well, it's awesome because if the player has the will nowadays, and will is huge, right? Will is everything. Skill is great. You need skill. You need skill to win. You need skill to score goals. But if you combine that skill and the will, I mean, see, the sky's the limit because you have all of the tools in place to help you get to where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
So there's no secrets anymore. Everybody's pulling on the same chain, trying to get everybody to get to where they want to go, and we're all doing it together. And like I said, that would have been unbelievable to have back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, it would have been fun. I mean, I hate to get caught in the dinosaur era, but yeah, I mean, I felt it was always.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we always wish you would have or could have,
Yeah.
whatever, and the onus was on us. Now we have a whole plan in place for everybody that's under our organizational umbrella to be the best they can be,
Right.
and that's a pretty cool thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I've always felt it was like confrontational, adversarial. Like there was like this big chasm right between the players and the coaches, and like you were kind of onto your own thing. And now if you feel like you're all going the same direction and everyone actually has your best interest at heart in some realm within the team structure, obviously, but they still want you to succeed. That's a way different feeling to show up at the rink at. I would think.
It's awesome. I'm telling you, I love our group. We got a great group in New York right now, and I remember talking to you in the January break. We were like 11 or 12 points out of the playoffs, and I'm like, I love our team. We got a good group of kids, and man, we work hard and we do a lot of good things, and we got skill, and and now we're 2 points out of it with 11 games to go, and it's what's going on in the world is crazy, and it's unfortunate, but man, we were on a pretty good run there.
Yeah, damn straight you were. We'll get into New York right at the end. Like with Colorado, then their team's doing really well now. So you're 2 years removed from Colorado. It must be interesting. You must have some emotional ties to some of the guys that are there that you worked with and helped get there. Is there any one success story that you just sort of love to talk about that you feel like you really helped this guy make an impact and get to where you wanted to go?
Oh man, you put me on give me a heads up on this one. We had too many of those guys. I mean, that team, they've drafted some great players on that team, and we're the beneficiary of getting these kids that are really, really high end skill. And basically it's don't screw those guys up because their skill level is through the roof, right?
Right.
The one that sticks out for me in Colorado was Mikko Rantanen. Obviously, I'll get into him, but you look at Landeskog, like we knew in development camp that guy was going to be the captain of the Avalanche. Like he's a born leader. He's a phenomenal human being, great guy, and a heck of a hockey player. You got McKinnon, who was obviously who he was in junior and destroyed everything in the Memorial Cup. He dominated, and he's done the same thing in the NHL. But you got a guy like Mikko Rantanen that, we took him. I think he was 10th overall, I think, if I remember correctly. But he was a huge kid, like 6'5", 200+ pounds, and I remember them saying he's going to play the whole year in the American Hockey League, and I was like, wow, because he had a really good camp.
Right.
So he spent the entire year in San Antonio playing for the Rampage, and to watch his development curve in that league, which I don't know, I'm sure you've talked about it with some of the other guys that you've interviewed. The American Hockey League is the hardest league in the world to look good in, I think. It's because it's a little bit more scrambly, and there's a lot of hockey sense with these guys in the NHL. And so it's harder to look, elite of elite in the American Hockey League. And by Christmas time, Rantanen was that guy. He was unreal. He was an 18-year-old kid playing in a really tough league, and by Christmas time, he was just taking off. And it was unbelievable to watch what he did through the rest of the year, and then right out of training camp the next year, man, he just took off, and he's he's a real fun guy for me to watch every night when I do get the chance to watch the Avalanche play.
Sure. Well, I know you're a humble guy and you don't probably like talking about it, but like what was like, so he is an 18-year-old kid and you're the director of player development and you're down there. I mean, you're watching him, like you said, you're talking with them. Like what kind of pieces were you helping him with at that time? What do you think that he was, where did you fit into that development curve?
Just, just the some of the things that we do, like we put into our program, we had a little development time before practice or after practice with small groups, right? And just the skating piece, like edge work and stuff like that. Like I said, he's a high-end talent. He's got vision and ability beyond belief. And, so the skating piece to me was everything for him, and just working on the simplicity of inside, outside edges and doing little things before practice that just make your edges better. And just make you for a big guy to be able to be more deceptive and be able to open up the hips and be able to look one way and go the other way with your hips and edges. It was huge for him. And we worked on that a lot. And, you watch what he does now. It's spectacular with the size that he is and his ability to make people miss and handle pucks and protect pucks. He's a pretty special player.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, that's great. I mean, the edge work, I do think skating has come like maybe the farthest as far as in the evolution of the game, like what guys can do on their skates now. And even like what I'm doing with my Atom guys right now is, I mean, I don't think
I
we
watched one of your practices. I was really impressed.
Oh, well, thanks. But I mean, we weren't doing that stuff, right? And that's why these guys keep getting better and better, because now there's new stuff and new, there's new drills and ideas of how to coach the game. So I can totally see there. I thought you were going to go, I was anticipating you were going to go to the other side of it, because meaning the off-ice stuff, because that's one thing that a lot of people forget is, like, not only is it hard enough to make it in the NHL, but when you throw in a new language and a new culture and an 18-year-old kid away from home, from Finland, and now he's in the minors, and like all those aspects is insane. And you probably dealt with that a little bit with Kako this year as well, right? Like, I thought that maybe that would be where he would have needed some support, just like kind of figuring it out. I mean, like how to live away and from home. And do you see that with the European guys? Is there many guys that have an issue with that?
Well, like we were talking about with young kids, right? That maturity factor is huge, and that was never an issue with Mikko, like zero. Like he was in a man's body, and he was big, he was fit, and you've played with Finnish guys in your career. They're always elite as far as conditioning and fitness goes. They're ready to go, right? Yeah. So it's just major fine tuning, areas throughout their game and creating the habits that they need to do. And that's another thing that we haven't even talked about. It's just the habits of what you need to do to be a pro every day, right? So just dealing with those things with being an 18-year-old kid and understanding what you need to do every day to be a pro, and has a major impact on who they end up becoming as a solid NHL player.
I've just finished reading a book, and I can't remember his name, so it's not great, but it was a mental conditioning coach that worked with Jacksonville Jaguars running back. I think it might have been Taylor back in the day. Anyways, he was just a specimen, right? Like blew up the combine and one of the top picks, and he couldn't stay healthy. Right. So he was great when he was great, but he kept getting hurt all the time. And so this guy came in and he tells the story of, like, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I want to play 16 games, in a season. That's what I want to do. And so like, well, how are you going to do that? So they started looking around the room, and there was a couple of older guys that had played 10 years pro or whatever, right? In the National Football League. And they're like, well, look, what do those guys do? And you're talking about habits, right? And these guys showed up at 6:30 in the morning every day at the arena. Right. And they finished every day with an ice bath. Those were the two things that he noticed. Right. And the guy's like, well, maybe you should try that. And he's like, what the hell am I going to do at the arena at 6:30 in the morning? And he's like, well, maybe you'll figure that out. Right. So anyway, so he had to change his habits. Like I said, he wasn't going out late at night anymore. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't dehydrated. He'd have to go to bed earlier because he was getting up earlier. When he got to the rink, he got into a process where he was stretching and doing this thing. And anyways, the habits of a pro, right? Being a professional and treating as such. And those are things that again, you get back into when you have that example around you, whether it's the trail guy running the stairs or whether it's Rod Brindamore in Carolina that's there till the cows go home. Like when you're surrounded by that influence, it's hard not to adapt to it, right? And suck it up. But what about, so New York now, I know, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I think it's an awesome part because I'm such a big fan of mentoring. And like, so you go to New York after not being on a bench in 8 years or 6 years, I think, if I got my math right.
6, yeah.
Right. So you're in the minors assistant coach at 6. Now you're in the NHL's assistant coach. And I remember when I first talked to you after that first month, you're like, Pods, this is fast, man. This is fast. And then you talked about Lindy Ruff, who we both know, and what an important part that was to you. Can you maybe talk about that whole, like getting back behind the bench and how that was for you, just sort of, getting out of your comfort zone and figuring it out?
Yeah, well, I spent 6 years watching from the press box. So game's real easy from up there.
Right.
You know every mistake that's going to happen. It's just a simple game from up there. And I remember vividly the first preseason game we played. Everything was good up until that point. Our staff was awesome. The players were good. It was practices were fun. It was good. It was a great learning experience, right? And then I remember standing on the bench for the first game, and the puck dropped, and I was like, oh my God. Like it was so fast. Like I can't even explain to you how fast the game was to me, because I hadn't been on a bench in 6 years. It was zooms, like it was crazy. You couldn't even follow anything. Guys are asking you questions. You think you got the iPads out there because it was an eye opener at how elite these guys skate now. Like it is crazy. Even a guy that you would say, oh, he's not a great skater, that guy was fast when we played. Right. Like everybody is fast. Everybody can move and cut. And it's honestly, the game is at an unbelievable place in time, and how fast and skilled and how fit all these guys are. It's just unbelievable. And it was a transition. It was hard. Like, Lindy Ruff, amazing human being, him. He took me in because I was like, holy man, that's fast. So we ended up sitting in our movie room, and we spent about 3 hours going through the first period of that exhibition game. Basically just a little tune-up time, right? And he's like, we can do this as much as you need, as much as you want, till you feel like you're caught up and you feel comfortable and confident again. And it didn't take long. By the third or fourth game of the preseason, it's like, everything slows down and you feel like you can get a grasp on it again. But man, my amazement on how fast these guys are standing behind that bench and the athletes that we have in our league, it was mind blowing how
right.
quick they are.
Yeah, I believe it. Do you think there was any, like, I just remember now relating to it as a player, like the game was definitely faster from the minors to the NHL, but it wasn't as fast as my head was making it seem, if that makes any sense. I think.
Okay. So the difference between when you and I played to now is nobody's allowed to put a stick on anybody. So everything everywhere is full speed. Like when we coach, we talk about sprinting in small areas. Well, when we played, you couldn't. Well, why? Because the guy had your jersey wrapped up in his stick, and you couldn't go anywhere. That was just the game. The bigger, stronger guys. Like you couldn't get through those guys because you were allowed to hook and hold and grab and whatever.
Yeah.
So now all these guys with the training and nutrition and fitness and everything that they do and the skating work that they do, the speed and the cuts and the quickness and the tight turns and all these things they do, everything they can do, they do it at max speed, and it's crazy. Right. So it makes for trying to earn that ice. The defenders are so quick at eliminating ice. Offensively, you have to be so fast to find that free ice, and the game is just so fast. It's so impressive to watch at ice level. I can't say enough about them as athletes. It's just unreal to watch.
That's super cool. What has been most rewarding about being back in that position? I mean, at the NHL level, on the bench, traveling with the team, working with these top line players. Like, what do you love most about what you do right now?
Oh, just being back in the grind, back in the fight, trying to win. When you're in development, you're going to watch a different junior college team every night, or your American League team is your NHL and your American League team are the only teams you're really, pulling for, and you die hard with. Um, every other game, the other, 80 to 100 games that you see a year, you're hoping for a good hockey game, and you hope your player plays well. So being back on the bench, being on a staff, and being a coach, you're in the fight. You live and breathe with every goal for and every goal against, and the roller coaster that you're on. I can't even explain it. Like a win, you're to the moon, and you lose. It's just like the world's. It's just crazy. The roller coaster is crazy, and being able to, as a player, we had to do it as a player. You had to manage it, especially when you get in series and playoffs and stuff like that. Um, you got to find ways to manage your emotions in a different way, different level, because at the end of the day, the goal is to just keep getting better.
Right.
And you have to kind of keep an even keel, even though our roller coaster is up and down. You still have to find a way to bring that every day, so that you keep building the relationships and trust, and keeping the end goal in check.
On a personal level, I know a lot of guys find that grounding place when they go home, right? The wife's there, the kids are there, and the family's there, and that kind of keeps everything in perspective, because 7-year-old doesn't really care whether dad lost 3 in a row or not, right? You still got to be dad. Now with your family, unfortunately not being able to be with you, do you find that it's harder to keep that perspective, or that, that even keel?
No, you know what? I mean, FaceTime's a wonderful thing. So you got a lot of outs there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly not a glamorous gig, because we are what I'm doing with you right now. We sit and we watch our computer like all day, every day, pretty much. Just whether it's trying to cut the other team's PK, or trying to figure out how we can make each guy look better. It's video, 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 and there's not a whole lot of time for much else.
Right.
With the schedule as condensed as it is now, there's not much time between games. So you leave the game, you got to get to the video, because in the morning the kids might ask, "Hey, what did I need to do here? Do you got some clips for me, or whatever?" And you have to have that stuff ready. So,
Yeah.
um, there's not a lot of time
Yeah.
to yourself.
Yeah, no, I hear you. What is your role in respect? You mentioned PK there. What is Dave Oliver own on the New York Rangers? What's your roles with that?
Power play. I got both power plays, and 6-on-5 at the end of the game when we're down. So um, basically more of the offensive stuff, and trying to figure out how we can score more goals.
Gotcha. So when you're on a bench, then are you talking then only about power play, or a guy comes off? Do you see something like, what's your interaction like with the guys?
No, it's anything and everything. And I mean that, like, it can be anything. A lot of the times it's hard to see everything on the ice that's going on at once. You might be zooming in on one guy, and another guy comes on, and fortunately we have the iPads on the bench. So, you can pull the iPad out, and there's great teaching moments on there for guys, showing if they're not doing something structurally right. Real easy corrections on the bench when you have the video to see it. Something that we never had the benefit of having. But when you see it real time, most of us are visual learners. I mean, you can tell somebody something, but when you see it, it's real easy to make a change real quick. So
Right.
that's what makes the game so tough, and that's why it's so hard to score, because changes are made right on the spot, and guys understand where they went wrong and what they need to do better the next time they go on the ice.
Right. Do you find yourself then, if you're working with the power play guys more, is it natural to see you've built sort of maybe a bit stronger relationships with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, you you meet with those guys every game day, right? We have power play meetings every day before the game. They're not long, but yeah, I mean, you spend a little bit more time with those guys. I spend a little bit more time with the forwards. Um, the one-on-one video, more time probably with the third and fourth line guys, trying to figure out how they can do things better to kind of move up the lines. But certainly more time spent with the guys on the power play. I love their opinions. I mean, they're on the power play because they're skilled, because they're smart, they can make plays. So trying to get into their brain to figure out what they're seeing and what they're thinking, it's huge. Just, trying to make your power play the best it can be. There's got to be a lot of input from the guys out there that are fighting the fight.
Sure. I think a lot of people don't know like how specialized the game's become, and I guess every head coach runs it a little different. But does Quinny let you? Like, is it yours? Does he get involved in that discussion about even maybe the system or even the personnel on it? Who picks the personnel? Is that Quinn at the end of the day?
We talk about it.
Yeah.
This group. Our staff we got a fun staff, and we work together well. Everybody reaches out at different points for help on something. If you're going against the number one PK unit in the league, Lindy Ruff runs the PK. I'm going to ask him, like, where can we expose these guys? Like, what can we do? Like, these guys have been number one all year in the league, and we want to fill the net on them. How are we going to do it? Like, where do you think? So get the PK guy to come in and kind of work through some scenarios, and then present that in our meeting. This is where we think we can break these guys down.
Right.
And it's the same with Quinny. If somebody's going or not going, he might come down and say, put this guy out, not this guy out. So that's the head coach. Obviously, he gets his job is to put the guys out on the ice that he thinks are going to give us a chance to win a hockey game. So sometimes it's not the guys that we have on paper.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Yeah, there's so many more people that are involved behind the scenes with that. Not even behind the scenes, but even on the bench, right? That everyone has their role and their responsibility, and I think that's cool too. It's almost like managing a company, right? Because as that head guy, if you have your fingers in every single pie and telling them what people to do all the time, it takes that, again, the accountability and the ownership away from somebody. So there's probably a fine line there where he wants to make sure that you feel like you're in ownership of it, but he wants to be still involved and have a little bit of an idea of what's going on, and that's an interesting dance even with the coaching staff.
Yeah, no, it's good. I got a lot of guys in my ear during the game. I got, we got everybody's. It's all hands on deck, and that's not. There's no ego. There's no nothing.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like we have a fun staff. We all work together really well. I got Mark Ciaccia in my ear. He's giving me face-off data through the whole game. I got Greg Brown for the first and second period. He's giving me structure stuff, like what they're doing. If somebody's breaking out against us too easy, this is what we need to do, or neutral zone, this is what we need to do. So he's telling me to tell Quinny these things. We got Jerry Deneen and Sam Kelly. They're in the video room. So the one guy's got an eye in the sky, the other guy's on the lines, and if there's penalties or goalie interference, like there's a lot going on all different aspects of the game. So, and then I have to relay that message to Quinny or to Lindy, as to what's going on. So it's a pretty fun setup. There's a lot of guys involved in it, and everybody takes ownership and a lot of pride in their jobs. And at the end of the day, we're a part of the team, and we feel it. And we like I said, we live and breathe with every goal and goal against.
That's insane. Even you talking about that. That's a lot going on. And then not to mention the play on the ice. And you're managing a bench and people on it, and like to make it all work. It's a challenge. It's not as easy as you guys make it look out there. That's for sure.
Well, I'm sure we look disheveled at some points.
Oh, it's so
That's
great.
All right,
you know what? This has been awesome, Dave. Thanks so much for doing this. Like I said, we've been talking about it for a few months now, and unfortunately, this virus has allowed us both a little bit more opportunity to open up our schedules. And I know there's going to be a lot of people loving what your story is all about and what you shared. So, thanks so much, big guy. And once we get out of quarantine, we'll have to go hit a ball or something. Hey.
Yeah, my clubs are in New York, so once we get out of quarantine, I hope we're playing hockey, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely.
We can push the golf thing back to June or July. It'd be nice for us to keep doing this thing that we've been doing here since the break. We really like to see our team get a chance to go and play some more hockey.
Yeah, you guys got a great thing going there, and it would be a shame for, everyone involved on all levels, right? The guys that have been great all year and the guys that are fighting for a spot now, and you invest so much, and there's so much involved in that you just like to see at least the pieces fall wherever they're supposed to fall instead of living in the limbo.
Well, hopefully the world gets this virus in check, and we can get back to life as we know it as normal as soon as possible. So,
No doubt.
But it's been fun. It's been good.
All right. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And till next time.
Thanks, buddy. See you in a couple of weeks when we're out of quarantine.
Yeah. thank you so much for listening today. To David Oliver, to myself, have a conversation. It's awesome to relive these guys' stories. I found out more about to Dave today than I had known him for the last 25 years. So I'm really enjoying this interview process. I hopefully asked the right questions to extract some awesome information for you guys out there to understand what it takes to make it, to understand what it's like to be an assistant coach in the NHL, to be a director of player personnel development, how to get guys better around you, and what it takes to win, and what it takes to be the best player you can be. So I think we covered a lot of awesome stuff there. Dave was an amazing guest. I knew he would be. To have somebody with that many different perspectives about the same game, as a player, as an aspiring player, as a player who made the show, as a player who played in the minors, as somebody involved in an organization trying to make their prospects be competition ready for the NHL, and then now assistant coaching in the National Hockey League. My goodness, there was so much good perspective and experience there that we were able to talk about today. And as always, please talk about the podcast. Please share the podcast. That's the best you can do. Subscribe to it, and let's grow this thing, because I have a lot of great guests coming down the line. I have my network I'm very grateful for. I'm able to speak to some great people in the space that are really wanting the same thing that you guys want that are listening. They want to share their knowledge. They want to help people get better. They want to help people realize their dreams. And that's what this podcast is all about. So please support, subscribe, and share. And hopefully we don't have too much more time on our hands here with this Corona thing. But until then, I'll keep putting these out and get some content on the table and keep you guys busy. Cheers.